everybody. Welcome to another episode of Have You Seen It Lately? I'm your host, Matt Sunner. Got a very special episode today. Going to bring my man, the creator of DJB Productions, Mr. Danny J, in with me. And we are going to be talking about the 1998 asteroid comet disaster movies, Armageddon and Deep Impact. These were great movies.
They really were.
Great movies.
They really were.
You look at it, and I mean, they came out within a month and a half, 2 months of each other. Mm-hmm. Deep Impact came out early. It was early May of 1998, and you had Armageddon come out around the end of June, 1998. And the cast, what makes them great too, I think, Dan, were the cast. I think, and we'll get into the cast of Armageddon since that was the one that came out second. We'll talk about them second. But Deep Impact had a lot of great actors who would go on and achieve major stardom. Yes. And were at that point even legends in the film industry, as it were. You had Robert Duvall and Morgan Freeman are probably your two biggest ones. Yeah. So you also had Elijah Wood, who has been in a ton of stuff and has shown that he actually has surprisingly more range than anybody would give him credit for when he first started out. I mean, especially you look at like his role in Sin City, and it's like, whoa, that's Elijah Wood. Right. Vanessa Redgrave. Yes. Another huge name in Hollywood. Small role for her as Téa Leoni's mother. Maximilian Schell. Yeah, Téa Leoni. Oh, I mean, great. She was. She didn't have a very long.
She is someone that like you have to know her, and you have to like her. Otherwise, you have no idea who she is. And she is one of those ones where she was one of the, at that time, probably one of the underrated, sexiest women in Hollywood.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
easily.
And as I was starting to say, though, it's like she hasn't had like this big, huge. She hasn't, achieved that major star power. But at the time this movie was made, she was a very hot commodity in Hollywood. Yeah, she was popping up left, right, and center.
I think she was in Bad Boys.
She was in Bad Boys. Yeah,
and a number of other things, but she
had some TV roles as well, some smaller, independent.
She was. It's funny.
But she was everywhere. You couldn't swing it like they say. You couldn't swing a cat and not hit Téa Leoni in the late 90s.
Téa Leoni, I think, was the cleaner version of Gina Gershon.
Yes,
you know what I mean? And not to say anything about Gina Gershon. Gina Gershon is so freaking sexy. It's not even funny. But like Téa Leoni was like. She cleaned herself up, and now I can let her meet my parents.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a great way to describe her. In James Cromwell, you had him. He was a very small part. He was only maybe in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, John Favreau. You have John
Favreau.
Yes,
and of course, John Favreau is going on to be in a ton of stuff and a major director and producer now.
Yeah, so I mean, he's behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. Ron Eldard, who was, again, didn't do much beyond the 90s, but at that point he was a very popular character on ER and a lot of other TV shows.
Who else was on ER was the girl,
the newscaster
that Téa Leoni was.
It was her boss. Yeah,
She was on ER.
Laura Innes.
Yes.
Laura Innes.
And then
one of the
astronauts, who was the black gentleman. He was
Blair Underwood.
Blair Underwood. He was on Deep Space. No. I'm sorry. He was on DSV. He was on DSV, which was a great underwater version of Star Trek, basically.
Yeah, it was with Roy Scheider.
Yeah, he was He was big in television. He was actually really big in television.
I believe he was on it was not Law and Order, L.A. Law.
Yes,
I think it was. He was in. I probably should have gone back and researched him a little bit more because, again, Blair Underwood was a name in the late 90s. Blair Underwood was again, it was a big name.
In TV. He was big in TV. He wasn't
a big movie star, but he was big on TV. Again, it was a name. He was a recognizable name, recognizable face you could throw in there. Mary McCormack, she played the female spacecraft, the shuttle pilot. She was all over the place in the 90s. Again, didn't have a huge career.
Our biggest thing was in Private Parts with Howard Stern. playing Beth Stern.
Yes.
And there's another woman who is the girl next door, and you're like, oh my god, she's so sexy, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and she doesn't give it off.
She's that. Oh, she's hot, but she's an attainable hot.
She's the girl I
could get with that. I could get with that.
Yeah,
in the old marry F kill game, she's definitely the marry.
It's the marry one. Yeah, it's the marry because you're a win-win with that. She's sexy, she's hot, and you get to keep her. Yeah. So.
And then you had what I always referred to as Helen Hunt Light, Lily Sobieski, Elijah Wood's girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's like she always had. When she first came on the scene, I'm thinking she's got to be related to Helen Hunt. She's got to be like a niece or something, And it's like no, there's absolutely zero relation. It's just one of those weird Hollywood things. Probably how she got her start. Probably going like, oh, she looks like a young Helen Hunt. Directors are going like, oh yeah, we could throw her face. She's got a very good face.
And that's also why you didn't see her anymore, because she wasn't really that great of an actress.
No, she wasn't.
Which is why
she had a very short career. She did not have a whole lot of range, but again, her part in this movie, it didn't require a whole lot.
But let's talk about the premise of these movies. This was a big year for disaster movies.
Yes.
Because not for anything, we also had Independence Day right around this time as well. Yeah. So Independence Day takes aliens destroying the earth, blah, blah, blah. This one's now natural disasters. We had a number of natural disaster movies. Meteors being really cool, being attacked by outer space. What are we going to do about it? This was a big thing. And with Deep Impact, and I watched it again last night just so I can.
So did I, because I will admit, I've seen Armageddon a lot more times than I've seen Deep Impact,
and there's a reason for it. And we'll get
into that too.
But with Deep Impact, you're talking about a movie that really and this is the contrast between the two movies. With Deep Impact, it's like, hey, this is coming, and we're going to try our best, but you got to have faith, because we're not certain we're going to take care of all this. Yeah. And sure enough, throughout the movie, they're like, "Yep, that failed. Yep, this failed." You know what?
We're hoping for the best, but we are preparing for the worst.
Yeah.
And while the main plan to destroy, or actually Deep Impact, their goal was to divert the comet, because it was a much smaller chunk of rock, for lack of a better term, than the one in Armageddon, and we'll touch on that again in a little bit. But they were just trying to divert the orbit. It's out there far enough, we can detonate some nukes just below the surface. It'll push the orbit out. It'll fly past us. Everything's all well and good. But while we're doing that, we're also then preparing these underground caverns in multiple countries around the world, where we're, as they even refer to them, as arcs. This is where we're going to be putting animals and seeds and all the necessary professionals that we need, so scientists, engineers, architects, basically everything that, if this fails and this comet hits the planet and it doesn't completely destroy the planet, hopefully in a couple years, after all of that ash and dirt and everything has come down from the atmosphere, we can hopefully come back to the surface and rebuild and repopulate and go on.
Right.
So, but I mean, it's as we and I were talking.
It's an extinction level event. They call it, and they refer very briefly. They refer to like the dinosaurs. Yeah. How like this would have been the creation of like another ice age in a sense.
Exactly.
They don't really get into that part, because like 2 years seems pretty
optimistic.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But as they're saying though too, it's like you probably have, depending upon where it hit, you could probably have a very large chunk of the world where you cannot rebuild, because it's going to put such a giant crater in there.
I'm not a scientist.
That's going to be.
Now, I'm not a scientist, but I'm going to venture to say, because I was pretty good in science when I was in school, that if you have an extinction level event, which is going to keep ash in the atmosphere for 2 years.
2 years,
okay? Yeah. And what they're projecting, and they tell you in this, they project that like plant life would be dead within 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. Animals would be dead within, I think it's roughly 3 months or 2 months.
Something like that. It's like 2-3 months.
Right. Now, if that's the case, then the Earth would be put into an ice age. because sun would not be able to get through. And that's the whole reason why all these things are dying. So therefore we would freeze over. And I think if you did that if the earth froze for 2 years, it would be a long time before it thaws out.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. Because and again, it's that premise of we're hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, and they're saying, hey, who knows? We're going to put all this in there, and who knows how long? We're saying maybe 2 years. 2 years, maybe we can come out and the atmosphere is cleared up enough where now we can breathe. And
I mean, realistically,
and it'd be like living in Alaska for all over the planet, but you can figure it out. Or who knows? It might not.
I think realistically, and they didn't want to get into it because it would be just a whole other fucking plot. But the whole thing is, I think it would take 2 generations, not 2 years, 2 generations to get out and be able to.
And it's a shame we don't. It's a shame we don't have access to somebody with the kind of knowledge to be like, okay, how accurate is that? But like you said, if you got into it, it would be too much of a plot point. You already had a plot of, here's our plan to destroy or divert the comet. Here's our plan if that fails. We have the backup plan. We're going to shoot a bunch of nukes at it from the surface.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, well then, hey, we've determined based on, again, profession, and they've done a lottery kind of a thing. So people randomly chosen. Nobody over 50 is going to go into the Ark because it's like, okay, well, guess what? You're beyond. Let's just be blunt about it. You're beyond breeding age. you know, you're not going to be very useful in repopulating the planet. So you're not going. We even see at one point Taya Leone's mother. That's like great little scene with Vanessa Redgrave where she basically gets all dolled up, gets her makeup on, nice dress, all her jewelry, and they never actually show her do it. But it's foreshadowed and made you believe that she essentially got dressed up real nice and then committed suicide, whether it be by pills, whatever.
And the thing with her was that, although she had the love of her daughter, the love of her life, which was the husband, he had divorced her. And
remarried to a girl 2 years older than
the daughter. Right. And all of that, and oh shit, the end of the world's happening too. And I'm not going to live. And you think about that for a second. You and I are in our 40s. Okay. So we are now potentially past the breeding age.
And in this movie, we would just barely make the cut. We could be sitting there with our fingers crossed that maybe we're going to get selected.
I mean, granted, a guy 90 years old can get somebody pregnant. I mean, which made that kind of
theoretically,
it made that kind of stupid too. We don't need him to parent the kid. We just need him to fucking make the kid. You know what I mean? But like, seriously, you know what I mean?
Seriously,
I'd be like, listen, I'll live in servitude if all I gotta do is pump ladies all day. But the thing is with this is that
I think I could live with that. I'm a sperm donor. I'm a sperm donor. Yeah, no problem.
I'll earn my keep in the tunnel.
Yeah. Just as long as hey, keep me supplied with Viagra and everything else I need.
I mean, if I was the president, I would go after all the rapists out there. They're like professionals. You know what I mean? And just like
you went there.
I just went there. I mean, it's the end of the world. What are you gonna do? Everybody's gonna earn their keep. There's no jails anymore. Come here, Jack the Ripper. I gotta talk to you for a second.
Come here,
Let's hold off on the knives for a second.
We're gonna keep you away from sharp objects. We're gonna keep you handcuffed. We're gonna keep you restrained. You just lay there and let the ladies do the work.
It's almost like when you pull like a ripcord. He's like point him in the right direction. That's all. And that's what I would do.
Oh man.
But that's what it is. I mean, great. The 55-year-old women, you can't do nothing with.
That's.
But that would be.
So I guess they figured they didn't want to be sexist. They didn't want to be sexist. Be like, hey, ladies, you're probably into menopause. You're, beyond, doing anything.
We can't
take the guys. Guess they figured that. Let's just make this fair. Let's not appear sexist.
It's the entire cast from Benny Hill coming in.
But it was ultimately it was the human side of the disaster.
And let me tell you something.
The fact that they didn't.
At the end of the movie, I felt exhausted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I felt exhausted because you're really feeling the plight of the people on Earth. It's like you said, in this particular movie, this wasn't about the heroic act. It wasn't about because the heroic act was going to be all for naught for the most part.
Yeah.
It was more about like, hey, this is it. We were handed this. Now, what do we do?
Yeah. How are seeing all these individuals and how they're handling their impending fate?
Now,
Potentially their impending doom.
Now, realistically, we're in a pandemic right now, which is far from a meteor hitting the earth. And we have buildings being blown up. We got buildings on fire. We got riots all over the place. We got race wars, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to tell me that this is a little bit worse, obviously, but everybody's like, oh, yeah, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to stand here in Times Square and watch the news. Get the hell out of here. You know the kind of rioting that would happen on the planet? Because people are dumb. People cannot fathom. I don't know about you, but I cannot fathom this is it, period. Mm-hmm. I can fathom death. I could fathom an accident. I don't know that I could fathom I'm waiting for at 12.
I've got a year. I've got potentially at most a year left in my life and just go about my daily existence.
Pay my bills, as he says.
Yeah, pay your bills. And I like the fact how they did show him like, hey, price freezing is in effect, so everything, so nobody's going to be able to gouge you, and do whatever. But it's like, how do you do that? How do you sit there and just not go like, what the hell am I doing this for? It's that it's almost kind of like, anybody who's been in their worst time. I mean, I know you, without getting into our own personal stories, there have been times in my life, and I know there's times in your life where we have been blindsided, where we have worked our tails off. We have done, quote unquote, everything right. And all of a sudden life throws us a curveball and knocks us on our ass. And you're sitting there go, well, what was I doing that for? What was I doing it for? And now in this case, again, you've got a comet that's the size of Mount Everest heading for the Earth. And I'd say at least let's be kind and say 50% of the planet is just going to say F this.
Right.
And is going to either A, find a way to take their own life, or B, just, you know what? I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just do whatever they want.
I think honestly, in this movie, the most realistic character was Redgrave. Tia Leone's mom. Because honestly, here's a woman who's dealt life issues, right? Mm-hmm. Her husband leaves her. She loves him. After all these years and years and years, because they're older couple, they're older family.
Yes.
And he marries a younger woman. I mean, this is something that happens in real life. And then all of a sudden, there's a meteor flying towards the Earth on top of that. Mm-hmm. And guess what? You're too old to come with it. So you're going to be left to die anyway. Yeah. So what does she do? Like you said, she gets herself presentable. She makes herself beautiful, and then apparently commits suicide. Mm-hmm. That is the most realistic part of this entire movie. That one little thing, because I don't know how brave or how heroic some of these people would be. Take my spot. I'm going to go back for them. All this shit. Let me tell you something, because there's a point where the Elijah Wood and his family, they're pre-selected to go into the caves.
Yeah. Since he discovered the thing,
right?
He's already off the bat. Okay, you found it.
Girlfriend. He says, "All right, I'm going to marry you, so this way your family can come in." Because you'll be all in my own family, and then they screw them. And this bureaucracy, this could be red tape that didn't follow through.
Yeah, because all the powers that be were dealing with so much shit. Somebody forgets to write something down, doesn't check the right box.
So her family, right? So her family is left out, and he's like, she says, "Well, I'm not going to go. I got to stay with my family, right?" Which
and here's another thing, a little plot hole. It's like, I'm going to stay with my family. I got to stay with my family. But then she's chasing the bus down as it's driving away. Like, don't go. As if the military said, no, you're not getting on the bus.
Right.
It's like, you stay behind. And now it's regretting it. You're like, you're going to stay behind. And she's like, no, but then she's running after the bus. No,
so this kid, and he's a kid. He's a high school kid.
He's a high school kid.
He's a high school kid, and he's
we'll chalk his actions up to being young and dumb.
First of all, the parents are another thing. I can't go in. I got to go find them. First of all, I don't know where the hell you live in comparison to where these tunnels were. They could have been.
Well, it was Missouri. It was
It was in Missouri.
Missouri, where the caves were built, and they were in Virginia because. And here's again another plot hole. And again, we will eventually get to Armageddon, but let's just kind of touch on Deep Impact here for a little bit. We'll kind of wrap that up. But at least it shows, and I will give the filmmakers credit for this. At least when they showed some of these significant, scenes happening, they're giving you a countdown of how many days left to impact. Yeah. So at least when they show that he's in Missouri. And he's going to go back to Virginia. Well, it's like 5 days to impact.
Right.
And you figure everybody's heading in from the coast. Everybody's heading inland from the coastal area. So anything going eastbound towards the coast, the roads are going to be empty. There might be some roads that are clogged because there's people now using all the lanes going all directions, whatever.
Right.
But theoretically, even in that situation,
the likelihood, though, bottom line,
in 5 days. You can make it Missouri to Virginia in 5 days. Even it's
the likelihood of him finding them.
That's the problem. The likelihood of him finding them on that stretch of
highway
was
0.0000.3. That's what it was. And
I'm praying for a miracle. And oh my Lord, I guess you must be blessed by the Lord Himself that you found them.
And he's a kid.
People, yeah,
he's a kid. Yeah. I sometimes couldn't get dressed properly at that age. Or find somebody.
And I guess, I'll give the filmmakers a little bit of credit because there's a possibility that since he's already gone back to their house, he's a smart kid. That's at least what they've. He's a smart kid. Yeah. That you could believe that kid with his intelligence would think, well, what is the most likely route that they would take? What is the most direct route? So I'm going to drive that because maybe I'm not going to find them, but if I'm going to find them, I will find them along that stretch. And it's just pure luck that the tidal wave that ends up coming inland, because again, the thing that bothered me is the stretch of highway they used. It was still under construction. If you read the IMDb trivia on it, but there's a sign. They're only 6 miles from Virginia Beach. You see the sign right on the side of the road, Virginia Beach, 6 miles.
Yeah.
And they're talking that, Morgan Freeman at one point, he's saying that tidal
600 miles in.
600 miles in. That's a long way. Now, again, they're up in a mountain. So, you're thinking that maybe, again, hopefully that tidal wave is being channeled because of, being the Appalachian Mountains. It's being diverted. Right. And, the projections.
And in all honesty, realistically, physicality happens. And you're like, all right, well, it didn't make 600 miles, 600,000. It made 30 miles. Or, you know what I mean? Realistic, that could happen.
It hit enough stuff, there was enough things.
We were lucky.
Slow it down. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, again, it's just like any scientist will tell you, any engineer will tell you, when they are predicting a disaster or a failure point, they will give you the worst. Mm-hmm. They will say it's going to go 600 miles because they want you to get 800 miles away. An architect or an engineer, if it says, they say, well, the building can sustain 80 tons of weight. Well, odds are it can sustain 100 tons of weight because they know some stupid asshole is going to overload the structure.
Right.
So they're going to give you ranges. So again, it's unlikely, but it is plausible. But what was really great about the movie, as we said, is it was a drama.
Mm-hmm.
And as we'll talk about, Armageddon was the action movie.
Yes.
The heroic movie. Deep Impact is how is everybody dealing with this? From just the common man to the people in the press who have to report what's going on and keep doing their job so people stay informed, to the president. Morgan Freeman was great.
He was.
As the president in this. Because he showed that stoic leadership that you would expect from your president, but also, too, his humanity.
Right.
Where he's getting, hey, I'm just like you. And, hey, my position affords me a
Morgan Freeman would make a great president, period.
Yeah, he would.
If he actually knew.
I'd vote for
him. He'd make a great president. I would vote for him. Yeah.
I would vote for him.
Now, the one scene in Deep Impact that is very, very memorable. And it kind of sums up the whole movie. And it actually is shown in a lot of movie posters, etc., is where towards the end, Tia Leone, who is estranged to her father because of what we talked about, that Melissa Redgrave and him were divorced, etc., blah, blah, blah. Well, he tries desperately to connect back with his daughter because the end of days are happening.
Yeah, the end of days are happening. His brand new wife left him.
Yes.
To go be with her mother because it's like, hey, you're my husband, you're my new husband, whatever, and your daughter hates me, but this is my mom. I gotta be with my mom, and just like
see it, Chuck. Yeah, that's about it. So they're on the beach right before the tidal wave hits, and the tidal wave they said was around 3,300 feet high or something like that.
Yeah, like 1,000 feet, I think, because even too when they show it hit the World Trade Center, you figure those buildings, they were about 1,100, 1,200 feet tall, I think 1,500. So it's let's just say 2,000. Let's just say 2,000 for a nice rough from what they actually show.
They're on the beach. They're on the beach, and I'm sitting there with my daughter watching this, and they're on the beach, and he's very stoic, and he's staring up, and he's holding her real tight, and she's like, "Daddy," right? And she's a grown woman.
Yeah,
and because they're about to die.
Yeah, they're standing. They're going to be the first thing that wave hits.
Yeah. And my daughter was like, what happens to them? Did they die? Did they drown? Like I said, I think they would have to be crushed.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine being in that path of what that was, but I would imagine that they are crushed.
Yeah. It's as anybody who's done a belly flop into a pool or a lake, you think about how hard. I mean, it's like Bill Engvall once said, somebody replaced the water with concrete.
Yeah.
And you feel that smack, how powerful that impact is. And now you've got a 2,000-foot wall of water that's moving faster than the speed of sound.
Yes.
As soon as that thing hits you, it probably just destroys your body.
Yeah.
It is like, it is a blunt force trauma that, if anything, it's going to snap your neck and kill you instantly.
You would hope.
At the very minimum.
You would hope so, because I think drowning would be one of the most horrible ways to die.
Yeah. I've always said the two worst ways I could ever imagine dying would be drowning or being burned alive.
Yeah. But like, I couldn't imagine.
No.
Like you're sitting there and with your daughter, and like, you can't even protect your daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this.
All you can do is comfort.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what
be like,
memorable,
hey, happening, but at least we're together, and it's true.
That scene for me, honestly, was more heroic, was more memorable in a sense than the astronauts making the decision to say, "Hey, we're going to use these remaining nukes that we should have used earlier," and we can't do anything about the small one, but we'll move the big one. We'll get the big one out of here.
Yeah. So it's like it's that whole aspect, like you said, the little one, that one's not going to destroy. That one is not the one that's going to destroy the planet and end life. It's the big one.
Check this out. Here's another plot hole for you, real quick. Not for nothing. Their intention was to move it out of orbit. Not going to destroy it, but move it out of orbit. So they use half their payload, from what we understand.
Yeah, and they put 4 nukes in there. And again, what you and I were saying before we recorded, why didn't they use all 8?
Right, but here's the deal, though. Right, so they're left with 4 nukes. Right? They use 4, they're left with 4. So the bigger one they go into, and they blow up 4 nukes. And it blows up the entire large rock. If they used 6 on the first time, that whole rock should have blown up, not a piece blown off to the side.
And here's again,
maybe they had to go deeper.
It's that plot hole of they're trying to do it quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yeah.
Whereas we'll get into Armageddon. Armageddon was like, hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this right, and this is the only way we got a chance to do this, and whatever. So we'll talk more about that in a few moments. But again, you said, why did they, if they had 8 nukes, why did they only use 4 to divert it? Why not try and use all 8 to divert it?
Well, why did 4 blow off a chunk, and another 4 blew up the rest of the fucking thing?
Well, and here's the only. And I was thinking
why did the first floor blow up the rest of the fucking thing?
Well, and here's what I was thinking too, because I was asking myself that same question, and here's the only answer I have for that. This is the only answer I have that makes that plausible. They had 8 nuclear weapons on board. Okay, first off, as Robert Duvall's character says, because of the chunk they blew off, it exposed enough of the ice in the center of it that outgassing it basically all melted out. So now they've got a 2-mile deep crater in the front of this thing. So they get deep enough in it
that they're blown up inside out. Yeah.
To blow it from the inside out. So again, like what Armageddon did, go deep into it and try and blow it, hope it breaks along its own natural fault lines and everything else. Because again, the comet, it's rock and it's ice and everything else. So you're figuring it's rock being held together by ice. So hopefully you blow up enough of that ice, it puts all the smaller pieces out there.
Right.
But they also talked about in the beginning of the movie, and it's like they only mention it briefly, they were calling them Orion engines, but it was basically a nuclear powered spaceship. The drive engine was a nuclear reactor. So you had 8 nukes to go off, but then you had a nuclear reactor as your propulsion system. So it would be all like, well, if I'm going to create a giant disaster, I can probably take 2 or 3 nukes, and if I detonate them in the right place at a nuclear power plant somewhere, I'm going to get a giant explosion. So if you figure it's the combination of the nukes, nuclear warheads, plus the nuclear payload basically being used to power the reactor of your drive system. So that's where that for me said, okay, I can believe that now, because you're using the warheads as a primer for that. So again, I think that makes it semi-plausible, for how that would happen again, and how deep they went into the center of it. They said it's like 2 miles deep. Right. So again, it's these movies are 2 sides of the same coin.
Yes.
It is truly Deep Impact is how are the people on Earth dealing with it? How do you deal with your own mortality? How do you deal with the possibility that I only have this much time to live, and what am I going to do with my time?
Right. Now, about a month and a half later,
we get Armageddon.
People are devastated by Deep Impact.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God, I want to hug my dad. I want to hug my kids from Deep Impact. You know what I mean? And now, we get Armageddon, and now here's Die Hard in space, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I think you could kind of put it that way. Yeah. And that's what, again, we'll start off again with the cast.
Yes.
One of the things, because again, you can have an excellently written movie, you can have an excellently directed movie. If you don't have a great cast that can pull it off,
right,
your movie will fail. Steven Spielberg could put you and me in a movie, and it could be the best script ever written, and obviously with his directorial skills and production skills, and it would be a shit movie.
It would be a shit movie.
It would be a shit movie. Yeah. But obviously Bruce Willis. Okay, you got to start off with me.
And he's huge at that time. He was huge at that time. He was huge.
Billy Bob Thornton.
Great actor.
Yeah.
Billy Bob Thornton does not get enough credit for what.
No, he does not. No, he does not, because he plays everything, and whatever you ask him to play, whether it be this this NASA.
Well, here's the deal. Billy Bob Thornton is the same
Sling Blade and Bad Santa.
He's
3 characters that couldn't be any further apart.
He's the same guy in every movie, but you like him, so it doesn't matter. That's the difference. You like that guy, but he's the same guy in every movie. You know what I mean? Some people are like, "Oh, he's the same guy in every movie," and you don't like him. That's the problem. But you like no matter what he does. He's the same guy. He's the same guy. You like him in every movie.
He's awesome. Ben Affleck. Granted,
just recently signed a new deal to be Batman in some of the newer. Yeah, he's coming back as Batman. So this is a mega superstar, and he was with Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah, I mean, has he had some flops? Has he had some flops?
Sure. Has everybody?
Yeah, but overall, you look at his body of work. He has had way more successes than he's had failures, and I think really any of the movies that he's been in flops have not been a flop because of him. He wasn't the reason it was a flop.
No, but as an actor, you got to be really like selective.
Yeah. I think
to pick. And some actors are too selective. I.e., like John Malkovich, what's that guy that was the original? He was in He was the original Red Skull, and he was in The Matrix. Was it Hugo Mortensen or something like? What is his name?
Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving. He's another
Great
one.
Anything he's in, but he's very, very selective.
Very selective, right? And
Doesn't do a lot.
And I think to a fault. As a fan, I think to a fault.
I would love to see him in a lot more stuff because I really enjoy him as an actor.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi.
Is again great in everything.
Yeah.
Great in everything. You again, one of those guys that so totally underrated, but whatever you ask him to play, whether it is a serious role or it is a goofy role. I mean, you look at his character in Mr. Deeds, that googly-eyed weird dude, but you love him in it because it's like he's so totally believable. And he's a bit of a wild man, just in general. And hey, this is a guy, former New York firefighter. I mean, so this guy is he's just a solid stand-up dude anyway. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why I think you like him so much in any of his stuff. He's a believable guy, and he's just a decent actor. And that's why I think he's a believable guy, which I think why his characters become believable regardless of what they are.
That's right. Yeah, Owen Wilson. Who's funny. He's very funny. Yeah.
And then again, and a lot of these guys, I mean, you have these characters in there that these are kind of oddball characters. These are misfit characters. They're oil well drillers. So I mean, they're just very raw, in your face types of guys, And I like the fact too, as Steve Buscemi in his character. I mean, he's a genius. He's got a PhD in geology. That's why he's it's like why he's so good at this job. And as he says, when they actually land on the asteroid, that it's like you missed your landing point. The reason why we didn't land here is you put us on a giant iron plate. Yeah. And they're like, well, who are you? And he's like, I'm a fucking genius.
But I am.
I know. In this field, I'm a genius. So you should be listening to me. And of course, then he goes loopy. We'll talk about more of that too. But Liv Tyler, I think is she's hottie, and I wouldn't call her a great actress.
No,
but she is
good. She's good though.
She's good. She's a solid actress, and she plays the roles that she gets well.
Yeah,
she doesn't have. I wouldn't give her again. She's not an actress that has a ton of range, but it's not.
When she plays in her range, she's good.
She's good. You always enjoy her. Will Patton, again. Guy that you don't immediately know by name, but you've seen him in everything. One of the big roles that most people would even recognize him from outside of this is The Punisher, the Thomas Jane version of The Punisher as John Travolta's.
He was in everything, and most recently he was in Swamp Thing on the DC universe.
Okay, he was in that.
He was in that, and he just played a great role in that as well because he's a bad guy in Swamp Thing. He's just so great. He was in Falling Skies, which was a great television series.
Alien Sci-Fi Network.
No, that was on TNT. That was on TNT.
TNT, yes.
I mean, it's just he's in everything, and he's just so good at what he does. Yeah.
Michael Clark Duncan.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Michael Clark Duncan. And here's a cool thing.
Actor who was so phenomenal.
And here's a guy that goes on with Ben Affleck, who's also in this movie, and stars in Daredevil as the Kingpin. Ben Affleck's Daredevil to his Kingpin, and they had great chemistry together. He was a great actor. It was a loss to lose him, but what a great actor he is, and like he plays that gentle giant in like all movies.
Yeah, Green Mile. I mean, his performance in Green Mile. I mean, geez. I mean, that's something that we'll have to talk about at some point. I don't know, with the general vibe of the show and our kind of dates, it might fall outside of that, but I might touch on it at some point. Yeah. But another great movie that he was in, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, Dan. I don't want to get too far off base, but if we're talking about Michael Clark Duncan, the guys that did the movie Super Troopers, and that remake of, and they were also behind that remake of Dukes of Hazzard, which was, I mean, funny if you don't compare it. It was funny if you take the source material away, that would have been a lot better movie, I think. Yeah. But it was more nostalgia anytime I watched it. But he played in a movie that they did called Slammin' Salmon.
Never heard
of it. Where he plays, you have to see it. I'm definitely, even though it's kind of outside our date range for the premise of this channel, I'll have to talk about it at some point. He plays a punch-drunk former heavyweight champion who has gone on to open a seafood restaurant. His name was Slammin' Cleon Salmon. So he opens a restaurant called Slammin' Salmon after he retires from boxing.
Oh God.
But like everything is like the staff in there. I mean, he's like, he hears a bell and it's like, hey, he's almost he's like
Punch
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Imagine Muhammad Ali, but with the vocabulary of Mike Tyson.
Oh God.
He's talking about somebody. He says, like, almost decapitated a guy. He's almost decapitated him. And he's like, anytime anybody corrects him, he's like, whatever, motherfucker. I love it. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off of this. Let's kind of stay on track. Otherwise, you and I will get too far. Peter Stormare. Stormare plays the Russian guy. Again, another great actor. He stars in so much stuff, and you love him. Mm-hmm. And again, some of these people, if you don't look them up on IMDb, even if you need to go off the use Armageddon, the cast list as a starting point, see their pictures, and you'll realize, oh man, I've seen that guy or that girl in a ton of stuff. Mm-hmm. You've seen them. Keith David.
Oh, he's great.
As an Air Force colonel or somebody, The Thing, They Live, and a ton of other stuff. Those are the two that always jump out in my mind.
And he was the president on Rick and Morty.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's the president. He's the president on Rick and Morty. And he has the greatest line in the world because he and Rick and Morty as the president, he goes in and he shrinks himself down because there's a shrunken society. And he says, yeah, I'm here's I'm president so and so. I'm the leader of the world, but we don't ever talk about that.
That's great.
Because he basically implies that the president really is the leader of the world. We just don't say that.
I run everything.
I run everything, but
everybody
we don't talk
thinks
about
they're in charge of something, but no, that's not the
really
case.
Me.
And then Jason Isaacs has a role in there as well. I mean, you see him, the Patriot, most recently, the Harry Potter movies, right. And he's great. He usually plays a bad guy,
right?
And he plays a great bad guy.
Now here's the unique thing about this movie, though. Mm-hmm. The same premise. There's a meteor coming and it's going to destroy the Earth, right?
Mm-hmm. And now it's a lot bigger.
It's a lot bigger. Yeah, it's a lot bigger. So they're doing something different with this, and this is where the movie differs from Deep Impact. You don't really see any kind of like reaction from the planet Earth. You don't see much at all. Because really nobody knows anything. They do, but they don't. Like they let them know. But up until the time of this is happening, nobody knows anything. Only these people that were selected, and these are they're oil drillers because they want to drill into the meteor, like the other movie did too. But they didn't get into all the whole specs of that. But the plot point of the movie was the actual MO for what they're going to do versus in the other movie.
All your action takes place. Here's what they're facing on this asteroid, which, as they say in the movie, Deep Impact was the size of Mount Everest. Well, guess what? This one's the size of Texas.
Right.
There is no coming back from that.
I didn't realize that Mount Everest was smaller than Texas. I'm not a geography guy.
Well, like they say, the asteroid in Deep Impact is about 7 miles long. They never mention how wide it is, but it's like 7 miles long. So I guess when they're saying Mount Everest, I guess if you stand it on its end, the longest end, whatever, and its overall size, it's Mount Everest.
Okay.
The one in Armageddon, it's the size of Texas. Forget it. This thing hits the planet. This is probably going to break the freaking world.
Yeah.
So there is no plan B. There is no. If this hits, everybody's done. Forget it.
In Deep Impact, how they were going to do things was not a plot point at all. It really. This is what we're going to do to move the story along.
Yeah.
Whereas
in
Armageddon,
to move the plot. Yeah.
Right. In Armageddon, the whole storyline is
the mission.
Is the mission itself. And so it makes it a little bit different. It brings more of an action thing to it because now you're spending more time with the astronauts. We really didn't spend a lot of time with the astronauts in Deep Impact. In Armageddon, it's the whole movie is them. The Earth eventually something's going to happen, but you don't know. Right.
Yeah, it's just a side thing. It's just pretty much the world is watching and waiting because the world doesn't know shit until they launch the shuttles. They don't tell anybody what's going on until right before the launch, because they realize, we can't launch 2 of the largest shuttles ever built without somebody noticing. Because again, they made these. I mean, these were larger than your standard. This was not the Columbia and the Challenger and the Atlantis. These things were giant. So it's like, as soon as we move them out to the launch pads and we're getting ready to launch, people are going to know within like a matter of a week the amount of time it takes to move those massive ships out to their launch pads. People are going to say, what are they doing?
Now here's the unique montage. Here's the unique montage with this thing. Basically, when you're talking about taking non-professional astronauts, we have to train them. We have to put them through the rigors of space. In other words, now there's a whole other montage of getting these guys set and ready to go, into space before they can even go up there.
Watching these astronauts going like, what are we going
to do? Right. And now it's placing doubt in you, the audience, to say, well, how are these guys going to do it if this doesn't make any sense? And the unique, if you're a sci-fi guy and you're a science person, to be able to land on an asteroid, right? You're in space, you're landing on an asteroid. How cool is that? Not for nothing. Yeah. And then I even thought, I'm watching the movie, people die in the movie, etc. How cool is it this asteroid's floating through space and your dead body's on that asteroid? Let's say you go 1 million light years that way, right? Yeah. And somebody finds this asteroid and your dead body's on there. How cool is that? All right, I mean, you're dead. You don't realize what's happening. But how cool is that? You know what I mean? Another movie that
your body just constantly travels from space and some alien spacecraft somewhere else, explorers come across your dead body and go like, oh shit, we're not alone in the universe.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now we'll talk about
an alien flight.
another movie that was kind of like this, which was Space Cowboys, and we'll talk about this in another episode.
Yeah,
same scenario where like dead bodies in space, floating out in space. You're like, dude, that's me. I'm out there. Like, that's cool. You know what I mean? But
I can think of ways to die.
but you're thinking about they're up there and it's so like precise, and either it's going to go this way or we're going to die. And that's the way it was. And now you have guys out there that are not trained.
They're not trained.
Technically, they're not trained to be.
They're not trained. It's called. You guys know how to do this great on Earth, but it's different up here. And then you also have guys that are saying, well, technically, it's different up there, but it's really not that different. It's still rock. It's still a drill. A drill still is going to drill through rock the same way. Right. The only difference is with. Now, think again. This asteroid is spinning, so it is creating its own gravitational pull. So it's not just not floating off into space, but again, it's called. This drill is going to hit this rock. So unless there's rock that again is foreign to man, it's a new element that has yet to be discovered somewhere in this thing.
Right.
It's the same thing. So you have these professionals going, you have no idea how it's to be an astronaut, and these guys saying, well, guess what? You just get me there and put me in the right gear, and I'll do what I do. I don't need to know how to be an astronaut. Mm-hmm. Your job is to get me there and show me how I can do what I do within the confines of that environment.
Who was the commander that was there with Bruce Willis most of the time? He was the main star.
Yeah.
He was in everything, too. He was actually in Batman. Yeah. He was in Batman, or what is it, Dark Knight? He was in the Dark Knight as the banker.
William Fichtner.
Yeah.
Is the actor's name.
What a great actor he is.
Yeah. And again, one of those guys you don't know him by name, but as soon as you see his face, you know you've seen him.
I love that guy. I love that guy and everything he does. He's just so good at what he does. Mm-hmm. And he plays this system commander who basically they're like, all right, you got to babysit these guys, for lack of a better term. But here's your orders in case shit doesn't go. Shit doesn't fly.
Just detonate the nuke. Detonate the nuke and get out of there.
You know what I mean?
And that is probably, I think, one of the greatest scenes in that movie, where they end up tearing up what is, it's like they're not going to make it. They're tearing up transmissions on the drilling equipment because, again, they're drilling through solid iron, so it's not made for that. So they're running into all these difficulties, and suddenly Houston is telling them, detonate it.
Yeah.
And there's Bruce Willis come walking in to get more gear, and it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
It's not going to do anything. It's like, it'd be like throwing one of those, 4th of July snappers at a semi coming at you. It ain't going to do nothing.
Here's the classic vibe to this movie is that the everyday Joe, i.e. Bruce Willis, is being brought in to do the job by the government. And the government has no loyalty.
Yeah,
unfortunately, to Bruce Willis and his skills or whatever the case is. And it's a classic scenario of the, it kind of lets you relate to say, as a working man, I make this country run, but I'm getting shit on. And that's really what happens in this movie. Yeah. You want to go into wrestling, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon's the boss. Stone Cold fights back as the working man, to say, against the boss. And that's basically what's happening here as well, that Bruce Willis is like, you guys don't get it. I'm going to, I can do this. I can do this, but you have to trust me. They don't trust, they don't have any faith in it.
You have to trust me. I'm the professional. And I'll tell you, if I can't get the job done, you need to trust that I'm going to come to you and say, all right, this is failing. What's the backup plan?
Right, exactly, and it's a classic fight, and I think we get behind Bruce's character in this because you're rooting for them. I mean, that's what you end up doing throughout the whole thing is you're rooting for these guys not to fail because the entire government they went with this plan because they had no other plan.
They had nothing else. Yeah, they had
no other plan, but they don't have any faith in this plan. And you're like, well, what the hell, blah, blah, blah.
It's more or less we can't do nothing. So this is not a great option, but it's our only option.
Yes.
It's kind of like, well, I got nobody to do this, and the only option is a crackhead, so I got to trust the crackhead, kind of a thing. And that's where they kind of look at it and be like, the crackhead's probably going to screw it up because he's a crackhead. Exactly. But at least we say we tried. But, and it's that tension and that scene is probably, I think, as far as action movies go, if you take, and a dramatic action movie, because again, it's a dramatic action movie. So let's elevate it. It's not just your blood and guts machine gun, no thought process. It is a thinking man's action movie.
It is.
It's that scene of him looking at that shuttle commander and saying, I swear to you on my daughter's life, my daughter's down there. I'm not going to give this up because I'm here, and if this thing hits, everybody's dead. So why are we going to give up now? Don't give up until it's game. Again, everything's been exhausted. Game.
Well, and that's what he says. He goes,
I have never ever missed a depth I've been aiming for, and I will prove this to you.
He says to the commander, "They're down there. You're up here." Yeah. It's very easy to make decisions when you're not here. Yeah. You're right here right now. Let's do this. Let's do,
it's almost like, when you're working for a big corporation, you got the CEO up in the office saying, well, we're going to do this. And you got the people working in the plants or in the warehouses or whatever going, yeah, nice try. Yeah. You think that's how it works, but that's not how it actually happens. So what are you telling me about? I'll tell you how it happens, and I'll tell you what I need from you to make sure that what you want to have happen happens.
So now the big emotional part of this movie is throughout the entire movie, we get the scenario that Bruce Willis, who's like the main guy, and he's the head of it's his drilling company.
It's his drilling company. Yep.
And Ben Affleck is a young guy that works for him. He's kind of like an apprentice in a sense. Yeah. He's someone that needs experience to learn. He's too good for what he knows. In other words, where he's got hands of gold, but he hasn't caught up with that yet to know the match the experience with it, and that makes him wild. Yeah. That makes him wild, and like you can't totally trust him because he doesn't. He kind of questions the safe answer. And he is involved with Liv Tyler, who is in this movie Bruce Willis's daughter. And so
And Bruce is not happy about it at all.
But you get this relationship that they have, this relationship where Bruce does care for him, and he cares for Bruce, and so and so over, and he obviously cares for the daughter or whatever. And at one point, and this is towards the end, where they're like, we're gonna have to detonate the nuke, but somebody's got to stay behind to detonate it because the detonator's gone. It's gone. It's damaged. So Ben Affleck.
They had to disable the timer after Houston started it. So now you can't detonate it remotely because they had to disable that to keep Houston from detonating it from Earth.
So now Ben Affleck, being the wild, brave guy, and it's commendable, but it's like, once again, this is you being a cowboy. Yeah.
They draw straws, and he gets the short straw.
And he says, "I'll do it. I'll do it," and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So Bruce was like, "I'll walk him down." And then what Bruce does, he rips his suit so that he's incapacitated from going out in space, and says, "You give this to so and so."
He rips off his own patch, and says, "Give this to
Billy Bob Thornton's character, or whatever his name was."
First name right off the top of my head.
And he goes, "And you take care of my Gracie, who was his daughter."
Yeah. Take care of my daughter.
So he's going to go out there, and now you see
Ben Affleck pissed because he's all like, I could do this. He's almost taking it.
But then it turns.
It turns, and it's like, Harry, I love you. It's like, it's that thing of there's always been this tension, but it's like, I've always seen you as a father, and
right.
And he actually says, he calls him son.
Yes,
he calls him son, and it's again powerful,
very powerful. And Ben Affleck was very good at that, because the desperation in his voice is that of, my father is going to die.
Yeah,
that type of thing. So
and they finally found that mutual respect and admitted it to each other, kind of a thing.
So then you go in there and they fly off, and then Bruce has to hit the switch, and he's in there and he hits the switch, and then you get that where his life passes before his eyes, and he watches Liv Tyler grow up and stuff like that in a matter of seconds before he nukes the whole thing, and how powerful that was. And as a father, I was like, that hit me. I'm watching it with my daughter, and I'm like, I how horrible that would be.
Isn't it amazing, though, as a side note, isn't it amazing how big of a mush we become once we become a dad?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Granted, I don't know about you. Have a son.
Nothing phases me, but
you have a son, but
for you having a daughter. But
I have a daughter. I mean, you having a son. I don't know if I would be the same way with a son. I mean, I would still love my son. I'm just saying that. Yeah. But I'm a certain way with my daughters, and having girls, because I'm daddy. Yeah, it's girls. Yeah. I would imagine, your wife. I would imagine your wife with your son would feel the way I feel with my daughters.
Yeah.
In a sense, you know what I mean, versus the other way around. But it was one of those things where you're like, oh, like hell, to make that sacrifice, and understand that before they do this job, they do a video transmission to say, hey, I'm not coming back. I had to break this promise. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I told you I'd walk you down the aisle. I'm going to have to break my promise to you. And again, Liv Tyler, she plays it so well. Yes. The emotion coming from her, touching that screen, crying, "Daddy, I love," and it's like.
And you know what though? Just like in Deep Impact, Tia Leone, who was this, she ended up being a newscaster from this because she worked for her as a reporter. Is an adult, and at the end, she's like, "Oh, Daddy." Yeah.
She becomes a child again. She's that 5-year-old girl sitting on Daddy's shoulders again.
And same thing with Liv Tyler. The same thing happens.
This strong, independent woman. It's like, who's always in her dad's face, like, hey.
And she is in this movie, right?
And you can't tell me who I can be and who I can't be with, and who cares he's one of your guys and whatever. And it's
I'll be with a roughneck, and that's what it is, blah blah blah. And I can take care of myself. But then she's, oh, daddy.
I need my dad. I need my dad. I can't imagine everything I'm going to live because of my dad. But how do I live knowing my dad sacrificed himself?
Right.
To
so that happens, and you're talking about what a powerful thing. And obviously they win. and you get this wonderful ending, and stuff like that. With that being said, and even you're like, oh well, that sucks for Bruce Willis's character, and she loses her father, whatever, and the captain says your father was the
he comes and that they had that at the end. It's
right.
I always thought the wording was a little bit long for it. I think they could have changed the wording.
Yeah. He's like, I want to shake the hand of the daughter of the bravest man I ever
knew, and it's like I think almost like the word "the" is in there too much. I would refer it's like your father is the bravest man I've ever known.
What I like though,
shake your hand.
What I like though was the character. I forget his name again. You mentioned him. He's the one that played in Swamp Thing and played in Punisher, where he is someone that was a deadbeat dad, and the mother of the child was like doesn't want him around. I don't want my son to be exposed to you because you're a deadbeat.
Yeah, and before he goes, he brings him a shuttle. The kid doesn't even know who his dad is. Like, who's that man? And it's like, why is he giving me a gift? And it's this plastic space shuttle.
Yeah. And he says, hey, I got something going. And all he wants is for her to say, I want you to look at me proudly one time.
Yeah.
One time. That's it. And he gets that. He gets that a chance. And he gets to come back.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing too.
And in this
come back and take that
in this celebration where everybody's got somebody coming up to them and hugging them, and he's kind of like in this moment of aloneness. I mean, even Liv Tyler, she's having that moment reuniting with Ben Affleck, and then the shuttle commander, coming in and kind of done this whole 180. From you're the worst mistake NASA ever made, Bruce Willis, to your dad, bravest man I've ever met, and showing that respect and being able to show it to her. And here's Will Patton's character. Like, who do I have? Again, what did I do this for? What did I do this for? And suddenly sees the ex-wife and his kid coming around the edge, like the fire trucks or whatever, and the kid running to him. It's like, again, as a father, it's like,
It was great. It was a great moment. It really was a great moment. And you see these guys redeem themselves, which is really great. And into themselves, they redeem themselves. Like they become better people by doing this.
Yeah. And again, one of the things I loved about the movie is how they interjected comedy in.
Yes.
Right was when the scene is getting to almost be too intense, they throw something in, especially and usually coming from Steve Buscemi, where it's like, hey guys, we're heroes. Let's not tell anybody about how I kind of lost it up there and was fighting a nuclear weapon, and it's like, hey, we did all this, but hey, now I owe a whole lot of money to a loan shark that I spent on a stripper named something around.
Yeah. Because he thought he was gonna die.
He figured he's going to die, so he's like, okay, yeah, I might still be in a little bit of trouble here, and it adds that levity, but again, and we get that ending. I think really, and the way it ended, it was such a great ending scene for it. Was you get to see Liv Tyler and Ben Affleck, their wedding, but then they've got all these pictures up of all the guys, on Bruce Willis's crew that died. So it's like it's like they haven't been forgotten. They would have been here if this hadn't happened and we got married. All these guys would have been here, so they're all going to be here. Obviously Bruce Willis's picture, Michael Clark Duncan, his, all these guys, they're there with them, and it was. Now again, this is kind of. And I know you're going to break my balls on this. I don't even know why I'm going to say this, but the soundtrack for Armageddon. Was a great soundtrack.
It was.
It had a lot of great, obviously Aerosmith, Don't Want to Miss a Thing. And obviously, I guess Liv Tyler, they had that thing was loaded up with Aerosmith songs. I mean, they were
they took the whole song and everything like that.
But there was one song. There was this one song that it was promoted heavily on the soundtrack on the front of the case as being like featured because it was like a big deal. Yeah. This was right after Journey went on without Steve Perry, and this is where I know you're going to break my balls. But it was like really promoted on the front of the CD, big sticker, Journey featuring Steve or whatever. So it's like they made a big deal about it on the CD case,
right?
But in the movie, it's like if you have to be, you hear a quick maybe 5 seconds of the song is playing like on a radio. And that thing, when you first see those small little, those small meteors, hitting New York City, and it's like there, and the song was called "Remember Me," and I think it was a totally blown thing for the song because the end of the movie would have been a great closing theme.
Aerosmith had that locked, pal.
I know, and it was again. This is where it comes in. The record company starts they're gonna push, somebody else.
Well, and understand, Liv Tyler's in the movie. Aerosmith's getting the top bill.
Oh, again, they were all on the same label at that point too. So it was.
If Steve Perry was the love interest of Ben Affleck, it would have been a different story.
Yeah, well, if Steve had been a Return of Journey with Steve Perry, it would have been the closing.
What a different movie that would have been.
It was but it was but again, the soundtrack though was great because again though it was an action movie. So what action movie can't have a great soundtrack? Great music through the whole thing, just pushing along.
Bottom line is, two great movies. Watch them in the order that they came out.
Yeah.
You really do want to watch them in the order again because you will be exhausted from Deep Impact, and then you will feel good. You'll still be exhausted, but you'll feel good at the end of Armageddon. You'll
feel pumped up. You're going to have that pride. You're going to have that adrenaline rush kind of at the end of Armageddon.
Right.
And but again, as I said, they're the opposite sides of the same coin. It's again, who are you focusing on,
right,
and which one you would personally choose.
And the good thing about this, and the good thing that this was, is that although they had the same subject matter, they're not comparable movies.
No, they're not. No,
so that's why they hold up, because of the fact that it wasn't like, oh, so and so bit off of this or they bit off of that. They weren't the same movie. They had some of the same plot twists, which was kind of funny, but the scenario is that they weren't the same movie at all. And they give you two different feelings, and definitely two thumbs up for both movies.
Yeah, I mean, and I was going to sort of say is, as far as which one you prefer, maybe you give the edge as far as which one you prefer, is really going to come down to, are you more of a drama fan, or are you more of an action movie fan?
Right.
Armageddon, as we talked about, I've seen a lot more times than Deep Impact because I'm more into your action adventure type movies than your straight drama, right. But I've still seen, again, before we recorded this, I went back and I watched Deep Impact again because I just wanted to have some of those plot points, fresh in my mind since I've seen it fewer times. But I've seen Deep Impact, I'd say I've seen at least a good half a dozen or more times.
Yeah.
Armageddon, I've seen probably 12 to 15 times. So I've probably seen Armageddon twice as much as Deep Impact. But again, they're both solid movies. You can't go wrong with either one.
Right.
And they were both well acted, well directed, well produced, and just solid. So I guess to sum it all up.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it lately, why the hell not?
Go ahead and watch it. It's great.
Watch it. They're both out there on most of your favorite streaming services.
Yes.
I know you and I have talked about it, and I think we'll put a link to it in the description. If you're not sure where to find a particular movie that we talk about on Have You Seen It Lately, they are not a sponsor, so I just want to throw that out there first off. We are not getting any of this. It's just something I personally found that has been great in helping me find these older movies that I've loved and even just rediscover ones I've forgotten about. It's called mymovie.com, MAI movie.com. They've got their app is probably a lot more user friendly because their app will allow you to actually bring up a keyboard and search for a movie instead of just by plot points or types of movie and whatnot. But they will go in there if one of your favorite older movies is out there on a streaming service, it'll tell you which ones. It'll tell you, hey, it's on Amazon, it's on YouTube, it's on Hulu or Vudu and whatever else you can think of, Netflix. It'll tell you where you can find them.
We'll put it in the description down below.
So if you can find it, I know Deep Impact's on Amazon Prime. You can rent it cheap. Armageddon, I really didn't look because again, that's something I have on DVD, so didn't need to look it up for streaming services. But anyway,
get your disaster on.
Get your disaster on. Most of the country right now is being told to isolate themselves again, or have their isolation is continuing. So this is a perfect time to go back and rewatch these movies. You know, pull your family close, say, hey, let's watch this together and enjoy it. You know, maybe you can.
It'll make you feel better about your current pandemic.
Yeah. You'll realize that, hey, this isn't so bad. At least an asteroid isn't coming to blow us up. You know,
well, Matt,
we can deal with a virus. It's much harder to deal with an asteroid.
That's true.
So
thanks for having me on, Matt. I really appreciate
absolutely, Dan. I'm glad that this kind of came up and we were able to find the time to go ahead and do this together.
Yes.
So in closing, also again, if you haven't seen it lately, go check it out. But also to check out all the great content we still have here on the DJB Productions Network. That Way Cool Wrestling Show, DJs After Dark, Capes Not Included, The Man Cave with Danny J and Big Vito. It's funny. It's funny. That's if you are a man's man, you're gonna love that show. It's great, a lot of fun. But pretty much anything you can think of, we've got something for you on the DJB Productions Network. Yes. So please like the shows, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and until the next time, we hope to see you again. I guess what at the streaming site. I like to say we can see it at the theater, but we ain't gonna see each other in the theater for a while.
We'll work on a catchphrase afterwards. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. We'll work on this. Usually I end with if you haven't seen it lately, what's stopping you? But anyway,
you said it 4 times. You're good. Yeah,
no, we're good. We've got it. Again, this is all live, folks. This is all live. What you see is what you get. Thanks for watching. Until the next time, take care.
Take care now. Bye-bye now.